So, welcome back, friends. It has been quite a day for the Indian markets. Markets being very unsteady today. Um, One thing that comes to my mind is that whenever things get so unsteady, you need to be very, very careful because um, they do not give you that trading opportunity. And these are the days where we advise people. That's why in our groups we did not give any specific call with a strike price today. It was very uh, it was the movements were very small and they were moving both sides. Okay, this also requires an art not to give when things get very turbulent. One event that comes to my mind which can have an impact on the markets other than the budget for India is the French elections 2024. As you all know, French President Emmanuel Macron has announced an early legislative elections for which voting shall be held in two rounds on the 30th of June and 7th of July to elect 577 seats in the National Assembly. After a stunning defeat in the European Parliament election early this month, the French president has taken a gamble to stop the advances of the far-right National Rally Party of Marine Le Pen. Now, Marine Le Pen has been in the news for quite some time, and many years she has been giving run for the money to Emmanuel Macron, and one needs to be very, very careful to see what the elections can bring about, because already there is another election which is going to happen in the United Kingdom, and the outcome of these elections can spook global markets because it can make European continent a little unsteady. Okay, now at present the global attention is of course being focused on these immediate political dramas which are happening, and there is a very good chance that the far right Rassemblement National currently leads in the polls and could end up with a decent amount of seats in the final outcome. And there's a possibility that there could be a new Popular Front coalition dominated by the far left in the second place. Now, a parliament which is dominated by the political extremes can plunge France into a period of political instability. At worst, it could lead to the adoption of spendthrift and nationalistic policies that could swiftly provoke an economic and social crisis in France. A French meltdown would rapidly become the EU's problem. Okay. Now, there would be two main transmission mechanisms. The first is fiscal, and the second is, of course, diplomatic. France, as you know, is in a financial mess currently. The public debt is 110% of the GDP, and the current government has run a budget deficit of 5.5% last year. Both the far right and the far left are committed to big spending increases and the tax cuts that would inflate the debt and deficit while violating the EU rules. Now, Bruno Le Maire, the French finance minister, has warned that victory for either of the extremes could lead to a debt crisis in France and supervision of the country's finances by the IMF or the European Commission. Le Maire has pointed to the reaction to the Truss government's mini budget in Britain to underline how quickly markets can turn against a financially reckless government. As you know, the Britain case where the Truss government got into a lot of things, and there was a run, in fact, on the pound sterling at that point of time. In reality, a French fiscal crisis could be worse than the Britain stressed with Liz Truss. In the UK, there was a mechanism to sack Truss quickly and to restore rational government, and then at that time you had Rishi Sunak taking over. That task would be much more difficult in France, where the far right and the far left have well-established leaderships, and they do not have to be more cautious, reality-based politicians on the sidelines. So what I'm trying to tell you is that there is a possibility of the far right and the far left politicians to hold center stage in France after these elections. First round due on 30th of June, second round due on 7th of July. That can complicate the political equation in France and thus the economic situation as well. Now, what can happen is that if the risk premium on the French bonds, if that source goes high, then the EU now has mechanisms to stop and intervene with bond purchases. Okay, but would Brussels or Berlin be willing to agree to such a move if the crisis has been provoked by unfunded French spending pledges? This is a similar situation which is happening in India and Karnataka, for example. There has been all these various promises, and the Karnataka government now cannot find the money. So they have brought in BCG to look into it and advise them as to where they can get the money to give all these 2,000 rupees to women every month and so on and so forth. Similar situation in France with all these far right and far left politicians. The German government is currently struggling to find savings of billions of dollars in its own international budget. Now, why would it countenance a bailout for a spendthrift France? Very, very similar situation. Similar story happened in Karnataka. You can see similar situation may happen in France. This is something which is an immediate worrying point and can trigger markets to come under pressure, friends. So, the French far right and the far left are also deeply Eurosceptic, and they are already railing about diktats from Brussels and expressing hostility to Germany. So why would Germany come and bail out France if such situation happens? If there is a run on the French bonds, if the bond rates shoot up in France, there's a risk premium that takes place in the case of France. Why would Germany come and indulge in such a country? There is a profound and an irreconcilable divergence between the worldviews of France and Germany. And you have that Jordan Bardella, who's likely to be the RN's candidate for Prime Minister, recently threatened to cut France's contribution to the EU budget by 2 to 3 billion euros per year. So all this is going to come and haunt, and need to be very, very careful. All this is coming while the UK elections will also be in full force. This is something just to be cautious about. We naturally would have more updates as we go further, and we have an assessment of what we believe could be the likely outcome and how global stock markets will react once the election results are declared. Please do join our premium value for the Indian markets. You get a full 1 week predictions in advance. Better still, Premium Plus is a good package which has almost a 2 week predictions in advance, and then we'll be covering these elections results and how they can impact the world financial markets, the global financial markets. To join them, please WhatsApp us on 982 086 1044. Happy investing. Take care. Bye-bye.